There's two analogies I want to give to you this morning. Everybody can relate to this one. A sandwich. So we'll go through that first, and then I'll become more of a heathen when we get to the second one. But the first one is a sandwich. Verse 13 of 1 Peter chapter 1. It says, "Therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming." Now, that grace is the top layer of bread on the sandwich. Okay? Verse 14. "As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance." Verse 15. "But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all that you do, for it's written, 'Be holy because I am holy.'" That's the meat, being holy, being obedient. The bread is a carbohydrate that turns to energy. You've got to have that bread of life, Jesus Christ, who the body that was broken is the bread. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word. So the word of God is the bread from heaven. Jesus said, "I am the bread who came down from heaven." So his grace is that bread, but then the meat is living a holy life, and like protein, in our regular life, it rebuilds our muscles. It takes care of that which is damaged. And believe it or not, you are damaged. So am I. And by being holy, our lifestyle, our way of life, our manner of living, and the results of that are repaired by living a holy life. Okay, now we're going to get to some condiments on the meat here. Verse 17, "Since you call on a Father who judges each person's work impartially." Okay, that's like hot sauce right there. All right? Impartial judgment of God. "Live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear." Now, I grew up, and to me, foreign would be putting jalapeno on a sandwich. But here we have jalapeno. You're living as a foreigner in reverent fear. That's the ketchup. That's what everybody likes. The way that the meat becomes what it is by these condiments. Live out your life in reverent fear. You remember what Matt read us this morning, that last thing he read. It says, "Moses said to the people, 'Do not be afraid. God has come to test you so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning." All right? That's what helps that meat to repair your life. The fear, the respect, the reverence for God. Verse 18 then talks about one of my favorite condiments is mustard. It says, "For you know that it was not with perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect." So that's thanksgiving. That's thankfulness. That's the being grateful for the sacrifice that Jesus made on the cross, the precious blood of Christ. "For he was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. And through him," now here's the other piece of bread. We got the grace of God, then we got the meat, the condiments, and now the next piece of bread. "Through him," verse 21, "through him you believe in God." See, there's the grace of God and the faith of people. All right? "Through him you believe in God, who raised him from the dead and glorified him, so that your faith and hope are in God." So you have grace and faith. That's separate from holiness. Yeah, if you live a holy life, it's going to repair you. It's going to make you happier. But the way you get to heaven is not by your feeble efforts to be holy, which are imperfect and only relative. But the way you get to heaven is that slice of bread on top and that slice of bread on bottom. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of Christians, and that's all they have is a slice of bread here and a slice of bread there, and there's nothing in between. How would you like it if your wife, your cafeteria, served you just 2 pieces of bread with a little mayonnaise? How would you like that? Yeah. So all you wives, go home today and make a sandwich and have nothing in between the bread. But that's the way we are serving up our lives to God. We have no holiness. We have no fear of God, no reverence of God. We have no hot sauce. You know, he's impartial. We don't realize that we are very special to God, but also God has no favorites, and if you do sin, you suffer. Even as a Christian, if you don't live a holy life as a Christian, you do suffer. And all God's people said, I know that for a fact. Amen. It's true. So that's the sandwich. But now I come to my heathen part. The second analogy is a poker game. Now, some of you are shocked that I would mention poker in the context of Christianity. And gambling is a horrible thing. I know it firsthand because when we lived in Kansas, we lived in northeast Kansas, pastored a church there, and all around us were Indian tribes, and of course they have casinos on those Indian tribes. And the whole area was dirt poor because most of the people wasted all their money at the casinos. It was dirt poor. You drive into those little towns and you think, well, there's not even any pavement on the ground. They can't afford pavement because the people have spent all their money on the casinos and there's nothing to tax. The houses are falling down. No paint, disrepair. You think, how do they live in these places? They don't have any money to repair them with because they've wasted all their money on gambling. So I know gambling is evil, but when I was a kid, we liked to play poker with matchsticks. How many of you have ever played poker with matchsticks? You're such good people. It's too bad you have such a heathen for a pastor. This is a high-stakes game. This is back to Exodus chapters 19, 20, and 21. This is where God says, be holy. Now, he said it, be holy in the New Testament, 1 Peter. But he says also, be holy in the Old Testament. Chapters 18, 19, 20, and 21 give us the Ten Commandments. We read them this morning, and a lot of other statutes for holiness, to live a holy life, which reveals his will. Has anybody ever asked you this question? What is the definition of what is moral? How do you define what is moral? They asked us that in class one time, and boy, I went on this long paragraph of stuff, and finally the professor just put us out of our misery, and he said, here is the definition of moral. Whatever God says. Whatever God says, that is what is moral. I was looking through here, Exodus 21. You know, he's in the midst of all this, he says in chapter 18, be holy, for I am holy, and here's how you do it, the Ten Commandments, and then all these statutes. Now, here's one that I need to tell you about at this time. I hope you don't get too mad at me, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Exodus 21, verse 22. Here's some statutes for you. If people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman, and she gives birth prematurely, but there is no serious injury, the offender, the guy who hit her, must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. Verse 23, but if there is serious injury, you are to take life for life. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. Did you know this eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth was in the context of doing damage to an unborn child? Did you know that? You kill one, you die. What is the definition of moral again? Whatever God says. You think he's changed his mind on that? I'm not getting very much response here. Does God ever change? He doesn't change. I'm the same. I never change, he says. So there's a lot of other statutes there. But just in case you're wondering if God thinks that an unborn child is human or not, I think you just got your answer, don't you think? Don't you think we just got our answer about that? I hope you don't ever question that again. And I can't believe how many Christians never even read this book. I can't believe it. I can't believe that you worship a God whose will you are even interested in. His will is revealed here. Why don't you read it? And this is not up for interpretations, my friends. People are all confused. Oh, you can't trust the Bible because everybody has their own interpretation. No, the Holy Spirit, Jesus said, I will send the Spirit. He will lead you into all the truth. God doesn't change. His will doesn't change. This is the truth. This is His will. This is His definition of what is moral. So, Abraham Lincoln said, because God is against man stealing and murder, which when they went and stole the slaves from Africa, and only about 10% of them made it across the ocean, they'd throw them down in the galley in squalor and disease, chains. As many men died in the Civil War as slaves died being mistreated. And my friends, guess what? If as many babies are atoned for by the death of Americans, don't be surprised if you see or hear or come to understand a judgment of God that leads to 60 million Americans dying. If God says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a life for a life, and He exacts justice upon the United States of America, then 60 million Americans will die a horrible death, a burning death. They burn the babies. They suck their brains out. They do these things, and they will be punished the same way. Anyway, so all of this is a poker game. At the table is the triune God, Jesus Christ in His earthly flesh, and the entire world of accountable humanity. The history of the game is this. God expects and commands us to be holy as He is holy, Exodus 19:6, and that is why He gave us the law through Moses in Exodus 20 and throughout the rest of His books, so that we can know what that holiness looks like. Holiness is really the idea of being different or other than that which is common or normal. It is common and normal for mankind to be sinful. It is not common or normal for us to be holy. We sin because we are sinful. The fall of Adam brought ruin to the human psyche, so that sin is the normal condition of mankind. We are broken. We're sinners, therefore we sin. But just as a bird does not have to fly just because it's a bird, there's some birds that don't fly, by the way, neither do we have to sin just because we are sinners. We see these commandments of God, and we should be doing them anyway. We know that. They resonate in our deepest sense of honesty and fairness. We should not see them as burdens, because obeying God frees us from the troubles that are produced by disobedience. We want synergy. We want a clear conscience. We want freedom from trouble. And that should compel us, impel us toward obedience and holiness. But those things are not sufficient to overcome our normal condition. So we all come to this cosmic poker table looking for something else and something other than what we have. So God anteed up His expectation that Israel be holy, different. So it must be that God is aware that we are not incapable of holiness, since He expects us to be holy. There's many things that human beings are capable of under the right circumstances. God could bring about those circumstances. In Exodus 19, God brought fear and reverence upon the people. And when you read that chapter, and the people said, we will do whatever the Lord wants us to do. They were committed to holiness because God had brought about fear, reverence, and a sense of awe and the determination to live by God's holy will, His revealed will in His Word. But that reverence and fear was very temporary. Deuteronomy 5:29 says, oh, that there were such a heart in them that they would always fear me and keep all my commandments, that it might be well with them and with their children forever. Oh, that we would always reverence the Lord. Proverbs 28:14 says, blessed, happy is the man who always fears the Lord. But whoever hardens his heart falls into trouble. So none of us can really reasonably expect that we will always be reverent and holy. This card is simply not in our hand. Solomon knew this when he dedicated the temple, here's what he prayed. Have you ever seen that prayer? 1 Kings 8:46. Solomon's praying along and he says, "And when your people sin," not if, but when your people sin against you, for there is no one who does not sin, and you become angry with them and deliver them to the enemy. That was in his prayer. He recognized that they will sin. There's no one who always does what's right and never sins. So again, in Ecclesiastes 7:20, Solomon said, "There is not a righteous person on earth who does what is right and never sins." In spite of whatever has been brought upon you, it just doesn't last. Our memories are too short. Our sinful desires are too strong. We fall back again and again into a common way of life. Israel did it continuously. God continued to bring trauma and fears to their national life to bring them to holiness. And he does the same with you and me. You know, you read the Old Testament and you wonder, when will they ever learn? Have you ever thought that? But couldn't the same thing be said of your life and mine? If you write a biography of my life, it'll be the same thing. When will this guy ever learn? And without those major problems, we're always going to default back to our sinfulness. So God already knew this, but he let many hands of the game play out in the Old Testament and in your life and in mine so that we would know it also. Have you figured it out yet? Do you know it? It's like all of this extending of God's provisional favors through the various covenants of the Old Testament simulate this cosmic poker game designed by the house to teach us about our dire condition. And it's only when we finally understand that dire condition that we are in a position to finally accept the love and grace that God has bestowed upon us through Jesus Christ. So the game continues past the Old Testament. The ante is still the same in the New Testament. We read it, 1 Peter. Be holy, for I am holy. And then, amazingly, Jesus upped the ante. He said, therefore, you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. Matthew 5:48. He upped the ante. Now, different casinos use different colors of chips. I happen to have read about one, and usually people go to the same casino all the time because they don't want to get confused and accidentally give a $5,000 chip, so they kind of stay with the same casino. But in one, a flag, a red, white, and blue chip was $5,000. And then they had one called the melon, kind of a melon color, that was $25,000. So we could say that if Moses put up a flag, then Jesus anteed a melon. And when we look at our hand, we see what is on the table, and we realize that we're out of chips and we have to fold. That is exactly when a good news offer is announced by the house on a loudspeaker. And it says, anyone who wants may visit the back room and receive more chips to continue play. And when you go to that back room, there's many chips that are offered there, but there's only one that will guarantee you to win. It is the chip, it's the only chip in the house that has an RFID chip within it. It's the only one valuable enough to keep track of. And even in the Old Testament, there was a great many worshipers of God who found the back room where these gray chips worth $100,000 are kept. They came to understand that salvation was provided by God himself through the blood of the symbolic sacrifice with a small s, which looked forward in faith to the true sacrifice with the big S, Jesus. And their faith in the true sacrifice was how they called the bid and won the hand every single time. So the good news that the house gives us has only one condition. No one, either in the Old or the New Testament, can leave the table or go to the back room and obtain the gray chip until all of their chips are laying on the table and found to come up short. If you have any chips left, you can't get up from the table. You can't go to the back room. You can't get anything else. All your chips have to be on and you have to see that they come up short. Unless you're serious about being obedient to the call of holiness, you're disqualified from making a trip to the back room where the gray chips are. And when you get back there to the back room, you're surprised to learn that you can obtain all kinds of chips with IOUs and other things, but that you cannot purchase the gray chip with any promise, no money, no good deeds, no religion, no philosophy, nothing. It has only one price, $faith. That is the only price you can give for the gray chip. And if you have faith to exchange, then you can go back to the table with the prize of the universe. And when you lay that chip on the table, everyone, even God, folds. They all throw in the towel. You win the hand every time because you've placed on the table the ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate value, the ultimate love of the universe, the death of Jesus Christ on the cross, which pays for the sins of the world. You have, through faith, obtained the holiness of His life, the value of His righteousness, and the reward of salvation by grace through faith. No one can call, much less outbid that chip. Listen to it. Romans 8:31. What shall we say then to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? He that spared not his own Son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? Who shall lay anything to the charge of God's elect? It is God that justifies. Who is he that condemns? It's Christ that died, yea, rather is risen again, who is even at the right hand of God, who also makes intercession for us. Nobody at the table can condemn you. Nobody at that table can call or outbid what you have just laid on the table by faith.